Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's often been said before, if you want something, just ask for it. A lot of times we're afraid to do that. And then, of course, on the flip side of that, sure, your mom had told you one time in life, be careful what you ask for. But asking is important, especially when it comes to working with your team or people around you in a work environment, even professional, personal life. We're going to talk about that today and kind of up your game in terms of how you coach people within your team, because she coaches people that coach other people. And she's back with us from an organization known as Future Legacies. And she works with people in this capacity all the time. Wendy Smith is back with us. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
I'm great, Steve. Good to be with you.
It's great to be with you. And this is, I think, a universal thing. A lot of us sometimes are afraid to ask for what we want. Let's say we're a manager and our team is working with us and we need certain things done. Sometimes we're uneasy to ask for those things. Why do you think that is?
Well, sometimes it's just fear of rejection or fear of being told no or fear of how someone will perceive us. But also I think sometimes a lot of times leaders fear asking questions of their team members because they don't feel equipped to really coach and ask the right questions. So they kind of default to the telling mode. Let me just tell you what we need to do instead of enrolling their audience, i.e. their team member, into the conversation and asking them their thoughts, their opinions, their ideas around solving a problem or improving something. And so I really hope today I can help your listeners out there to become better communicators, better listeners, and also just better coaches for themselves, for their team, for their family members, and their friends. That's what I'm really after today in our conversation, Steve.
You bring up a great point. One of the best things you can ever do is ask questions. And now I'm seeing it in a different way, because when people ask questions, sometimes they fear that it makes them come off as being inadequate. Well, they're asking lots of questions. Don't they know? No, especially even as a sales tool, one of the best things you can ever do is just ask questions. Don't tell, hey, this is what you need. You need this. No, ask where the pain points are, where they're, I'm just focusing on the sales end of it here, but you're 100% right. And asking the right questions that's the next level. How do we determine what the right questions are, how to phrase them, all of that?
Well, first, we have to break some habits, okay? And so one of the things that I find so fascinating, and it's universal, is that we all are fixers. And you just said it a moment ago. Let me tell you what you need to do, right? And so in all my travels over the last 25 years, so many times, anytime I was in a big room of people that I was coaching, I would ask the same questions. And I would pose the first question to the women in the classroom. And I would say, ladies, let me ask you, when you have a problem at work or something's going on in your world and you tell your man friend about that, what does he immediately want to do? And they all kind of giggle, and they'll universally, everybody in the room will say he wants to fix it. And I said, how does he try to fix it for you? And they'll say, he tries to tell me what to do. And while we applaud the men for wanting to come through for us and be helpful to us, that's awesome. And so we kind of get a chuckle out of it. But then I would turn the tables on the women, Steve. And I'd say, but ladies, you get frustrated with the men for doing that. But let me ask you, when your friend comes to you with a problem or your child comes to you with a problem, what do you immediately want to do? And they would giggle again and say, well, I actually jump into fix it mode too, because as humans, we are fixers. And so we jump into telling someone what they should do in a situation or how they would go about it. Or what actions they need to take. And I don't know about you, but most people don't enjoy being told what to do and how to do it. And they certainly don't respond well to it. I mean, do you like being told what to do?
No, but I am a fixer. And it's my opinion that guys are wired even more so to fix things. Women look at it sometimes in a different way, like to empower somebody to fix it themselves, where the guy comes along, like, I'll take care of it. All right, let me take a look at everything here. Let me try and fix it for you. I'm tired of fixing things. I got to be honest, but that's on me. But that's on me. That's
And you're not alone. I mean, so many of us are fixers. And if we look at this in a work environment, okay, let's just talk about how this shows up. So let's say that the company that you're working for is making a change, and you're a manager. The company's going to make this big change. Well, a lot of times what will happen is that manager will go into the team meeting and say, okay, team, company's making this change. This is how we're going to do it. And the team will leave that meeting unmotivated and actually resisting the change. And so, they've been told how they're going to do it. And that's not enjoyable. And most of them walk out of the room saying, I don't know why they're changing it. It was fine the way that it was. I like the way I was doing it before. I've got it down pat. I've been doing this a long time. And so you'll get that resistance. And so what we need to do instead is we need to find a way of enrolling the team into the process. We need to invite them to have a voice in the conversation, but more importantly, we need to allow them to emotionally connect to why the change is taking place and how it could benefit the company, the team, and even themselves personally in that. And so, how do we do that? Well, we at Future Legacies, we really pride ourselves, and part of our vision is to equip people to lead themselves and to empower other people. And before you can empower someone else, you really have to lead yourself first. And that means understanding who you are, what your leadership style is. And it also means managing your behaviors and your responses. And so that's one of the first things we start with. And we do that by pausing and not jumping into telling mode. And instead we pause and then we start to ask questions. And you said it before, questions are so powerful. They really, really are.
Mm. When we're identifying our style as a leader, where's the starting point on that? Should it be write it down? What do you think? What do you think your style is? How you manage people? Are you more emotionally driven? Whatever it is. Does that sound reasonable?
It does. And in fact, we teach on that in our leader series. We have an assessment that leaders take, and it will tell them more about not only their leadership style and how they lead. We also educate them on how they follow. And we also educate them on how they make decisions, because not all of us come to decisions in the same way. We make decisions in different ways based on different traits of ourselves and our personality types and things like that. So we do coach on that quite a bit. And so when we think about going from telling people what to do or dictating what should be done to asking and enrolling others, there are some really like proven universal tools out there that we strongly encourage. And in fact, Steve, you talk to a lot of coaches, you talk to a lot of people, really smart people on this podcast. And if you were to hire any life coach, any health coach, any business coach, they're going to follow a universal model of helping you define current state. Think about what you want the future to look like. Think about where you are now. What do you want it to look like in the future? What actions can you take? And what could get in your way, right? And they're all going to follow this similar model. At Future Legacies, we actually expound on that model and really teach people how to walk through not only coaching themselves, but coaching others. And I'd love to share a little bit about that with your listeners today.
Oh, please do. And by the way, Wendy, I love the assessment that you guys offer, so somebody can figure out, because I think I know my style, but I'm not even 100% sure. And that's why I was thinking, starting point, write it down. But that's so much better. So yeah, tell us more about all of it.
Yeah. So, let's take that example I shared a moment ago of the company's making a change. The leader comes in and says, we're making a change. This is how we're going to do it. Well, what can that leader do differently instead? Well, instead, they could have gone in to that meeting and, obviously state the facts, right? The company is making this change. And by stating that, we're just setting the groundwork and then start asking questions around to the team. Why do you think the company is making this change? What do you think this change is really about? And having your team to share out, because this is allowing them to process and think through why this change might be needed. And so we're just defining that current state of what is this change and what might it really be about. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to help our team distinguish the difference. What is the impact this is going to have? And so we get to ask questions around, why do you think it's important that the company is making this change? and have them share and tell you why it might be important for the company to change this particular thing. And then ask them the question around, well, why would it be important for us to adopt this change quickly and efficiently with the least amount of resistance possible? Why would that be important? And what could that do for us? And how might this change help us in our work? And how might it help you in your role? And just have them, and then you just ask the question and you let them tell you. And so once they've done that, that allows them to emotionally connect to the change. It allows them to see there is benefit of this change, because so many times as humans, i.e., we're fixers, right? We go from what it is to how we're going to do it. This is the change. This is how we're going to do it. You have this problem. This is what you should do. You have this idea. This is what you should do. Instead of jumping from the beginning to the end, by putting these middle pieces in, we're allowing our audience to emotionally connect to it, to see that there is value, and then to buy into it, to think, oh, wait, there's something in it for me. This could be good for me. What could it cost me if I don't do this? That's very, very important in the decision-making model and also in the adoption model. And so that can come through in your set. You brought up sales earlier in the opening. And yeah, it can certainly be beneficial to help your customers understand and to emotionally connect and to buy into the solution that you're offering to them, for sure. And that's just the first couple of pieces. I'll pause to see if you have questions or follow-up before I go into the additional steps of that process.
No, you explain great. You really do. It's very concise and very clear, which I love. Yeah, let's look at more of this.
Okay, so the first thing you've done, obviously, is help them define current state, right? This is a change that's happening, and what that might be really about. And then the second step, of course, was distinguishing the difference. Why might it be important? How could it impact us? How could you benefit? What could it cost us if we don't make this change efficiently? And so the next thing you want to ask them is, okay, well, let's just look at what would that be like if we were able to implement this change beautifully, and everything were perfect in a few months after this change rolls out. What do you want that to look like? How do you want that to look like for us and our team and for our customers? And really have them paint the picture of what that would look like. And once they've kind of cast that vision, if you will, for what they want that to look like in the future, then you can ask them, okay, great. Now, what can we do? What steps can we specifically take? What steps will you specifically take to start adopting and implementing this change quickly and efficiently? And just, this is just a brainstorming time. There's no right or wrong answers. Get a flip chart out, a whiteboard, whatever, and just start jotting down all the things they say so that they feel heard and they got to share their input and put their 2 cents into it. And by doing that, they start to have ownership of the adoption of the change. And that's really important as well. Not only emotional connection and buy-in, but we also have to have ownership of it. And so now they start to own it. And it's not the leader just coming in and telling us, this is something we're going to do as a team together. And so by deciding on those action steps, we can put in, timeframes for those. By when will we do these pieces? And then once we have our action steps in place, then we've got to get real, recognize we're human, recognize we don't always follow through, and we'll find a loophole if there's a loophole to be found to wiggle out of something. So we have to talk about what are the obstacles that could get in our way. What external obstacles could get in our way of implementing that? And then also, what are the internal? How might we sabotage it ourselves? How might we get in our own way? And then as they share those obstacles, write them up on the board, and then have them share, okay, how are you going to prevent that obstacle from taking place? Or if it does occur, what is your solution for it? So that we're not blindsided by an obstacle when it comes up and we immediately get stopped. So that no matter what brick wall we come up against, we will find a way over it, under it, through it, or around it. So it won't impede our progress in adopting that change effectively. And then the last piece that we really institute at Future Legacies is commitment. Once we've had this wonderful conversation, we've mapped out our plan for what it's going to look like and how we're going to get there and how we're going to defeat or disarm those obstacles, then we have to ask every member of the team, what's your commitment level? How committed are you to seeing this through and staying committed to this, and staying positive throughout this process? And I learned this when I went through coach training, because I'm a trained life coach. And I heard this question in that curriculum, and it was, on a scale from 1 to 7, how committed are you? And if you have anyone on your team answer less than a 6, they probably aren't going to follow through very well. So we have to go back to distinguishing the difference and talking about why the change is important, how it will benefit them, what it will cost us if we don't do it well, and then try to push their commitment level back up to a 6 or 7. And so that's really important. And through that process, you are doing so many things. You're being a great leader and a coach. You're being a great listener. You're asking powerful questions. You're modeling coaching for your team, and you're inviting them, enrolling them to be a process in that. And so many good things come from when a leader stops telling and starts asking.
Hmm. The one thing that stood out for me in what you told us is the whiteboard. I've been in meetings before where it wasn't just a whiteboard. There were uh, large pieces of paper, big, like a
Mm-hmm.
whiteboard,
Yeah.
all over the room. And
Yes.
there would be an exercise where it was maybe a creative situation where, all right, this is what we're thinking about. Let's have ideas. Let's look at it this way. And every idea is written down.
Mm-hmm.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
You just feel the collaborative energy in the room when things are done like that. I don't know if that's a standard thing in a lot of companies, but and the ones that I've been connected to, so fantastic. And
Yes.
everybody has a voice. And sometimes you laugh at some of them in a fun way. But no idea is a bad idea.
No. And you just said it. I use the example walking through a problem or a change. Change is coming. How are we going to do this? The beautiful thing about models like this one, and we call ours the meaningful decisions model, the beautiful thing about it is that it can be used in almost any situation whatsoever. It can be used for problem solving. It can be used for strategic planning. It can be used for idea implementation. And you can use it with yourself if you want to help yourself think through an issue that you're dealing with. It can be used one-on-one in a personal or professional setting. I've used it in rooms, large, ballrooms full of people, and walk the whole audience through that process. And I have a little trick. So I travel a lot for my work, speaking at conferences and things. And so the person next to me on an airplane, if they don't talk, I don't talk. But if they engage in conversation, I'm going to use this model on them. I'm going to help them in some way on that flight. So that's how I kind of get my little revenge for them, wanting to carry on a conversation for the entire 5-hour flight. So
Well, how do you know when it's time to shut up? You know what I'm saying? Or you just read the energy. You read the energy.
yes, I mean, if their eyes glaze over, they may not be willing to play and have a conversation with you in that moment in time. And
Mhm.
some managers will tell you, Wendy, sometimes there's times where I just need to tell, and you're absolutely right. Telling has its place. Telling is very important when you need to convey information very quickly. When you need to share, like compliance information. If
Mm.
there's a certain way that something must be done in order to remain compliant, of course you need to tell in those situations. And so it's knowing your audience, but also, for your listeners, be careful because telling feeds a leader's ego.
Telling feeds the leader's ego. Okay. So the person that's doing the telling, it's actually feeding their ego to do that. That's where we're going with that.
Yeah, it makes them feel authoritative and powerful. I'm your superior, so let me tell you how to do this kind of thing. And that can show up anywhere. It can show up on a work team. It can show up in a friendly conversation you have with your friend. If you start telling your friend how they should maneuver a situation, you feed your ego and you've placed yourself in a superior position to your friend. Versus if I, instead of telling my friend what they should do in that situation, if I just start asking questions, then we stay on a level ground, and I'm now coaching them and helping them self-discover what they need to do. And I've used this with strangers on the beach. Literally, I've had the conversation. I've used this model with a stranger I just met on the beach whose husband had just left her. And she was at the beach trying to collect her thoughts. And I used the conversation. I took her whole through this entire, exploration for herself, and how she was going to maneuver through this life change, but more importantly, how she was going to ensure that her son maintained a positive relationship with his dad. And I didn't have any, there was nothing in that for me other than just being a guide for her in that moment. And that was really powerful. And I'll always remember that experience. Her name was Marilyn. And I think, well of her every time she comes to my mind. But I've used this to help someone repair their marriage. You can use it in all kinds of situations. It's a beautiful universal tool if you'll practice it and get really good at it.
Isn't it amazing how, and I'm thinking back to a gathering I was at about a month ago, and there was one particular guy. He's got a bit of an ego. It's just the way he is. But he asked a question, and right away it cut through the clutter. I
Yeah.
didn't expect it from him,
Hmm.
but he's also a master at connecting. Like I got a guy. That's him. Like that's what he does. He connects people. He's working on a social club right now for uh, higher level executives. But it's amazing when you ask a question how it can cut through the clutter because everybody's usually telling, even in a friendly conversation. And then somebody turns around, and says, "So, how long have you been wearing those headphones?"
Hmm.
Like, whoa, wow, where'd that come from? It could be
Hmm.
it could be the most benign question, but it was a question. How do we get better at asking questions? Or is there a formula for that? Or is it just come down to just ask questions?
Well, there is a formula. We like to adopt the formula, and again, we use our meaningful decisions model. You kind of think of it as a funnel, if you will, of like let's start out thinking big and let's narrow down our focus until we feel like we have resolve on whatever the issue might be or the idea might be. And so we coach that a lot in our series that we coach. So our leader series, our team series, things like that. And so it's really important to practice. I mean, I stress that so much when I'm coaching someone and I'm trying to help them become a better communicator. This is one of the tools we put in their toolbox. And I tell them practice all the time. If you're watching a football game on television, it's football season. So if you're watching football, just sitting there on the sofa, ask yourself, okay, why did they call that play? Right? What was the play they just
Ah,
called? Why was that important to call that play? What do they want the outcome to be? What actions can they take now? And what obstacles might they face from the opponent? If you're reading a great book or watching a movie, then pause and ask yourself questions around the main character and what they're facing. And so you can practice in private in that way. Practice with your children. I am so thankful that I learned these tools early in parenthood, actually before I became a parent, but I started using these tools with my children when they were very, very young. And so now to see my children, as teenagers using this tool, they use it for themselves, they use it with their friends. My son used it in his college application essays. He used this as a model walking through, it says, tell me about a difficult time you've experienced or whatever. And he just can use that as his guide to explain the situation and how it impacted him, how he changed, what actions he took, and all those things. And it's really cool to see that they are going into the world equipped to be better coaches of themselves and others so they can empower others. And that's really cool.
yeah, I love the way you put that too, that you're just watching TV, ask questions, even if it's in your mind, because it
Mhm.
it it almost grooms you to be inquisitive. And somebody told me long ago, and I totally agree with it, that you should always stay curious. Be a kid. Kids always ask questions. Always stay as a child in your mind. Be curious.
Yes. You mentioned a moment ago of cutting through the clutter, asking a question has the power to cut through the clutter or the chaos. That's really true. And even if you're having a moment in and of yourself, if you feel frazzled or stressed or you're really tired, we call it being in the grip. And so, if that's the case, just pausing and asking yourself a question, your brain will stop kind of reeling and it has to focus on answering that question. And it's a way to bring you back to center. And you can just ask a question as simple as, what do I know is true? What's true in this moment? And it could be anything. It could be something as simple as the sky's blue, right? And so you could do that, but asking yourself a question can pull you out of the whirlwind that your mind might be in that moment.
Hmm. I've often heard it positioned this way too, where you say to yourself, is it true that the sky is blue? Is it
Mm-hmm.
true
Yes, yes.
that, we're having a conversation right now? You're
Mm-hmm.
just phrasing it in a different way, but it kind of bolsters more positivity and makes your mind
Yeah.
answer that question for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Hmm.
So It's really cool. And if you can master it, you can walk into any room in any situation and know that you'll be able to make an impact, not only for others, but for yourself. That's really powerful. It's as close to the silver bullet of communication as you can ever get, is to be able to ask really strategic questions.
Yeah. Thank you for those reminders, because I believe that we forget to ask questions. Sometimes we automatically do it. Sometimes we're genuinely curious, but imagine if you're at Starbucks and you're talking to the clerk and you ask them, listen, I've had the conversation. I like decaf coffee. They usually don't have decaf coffee. So I had a conversation the other day, and I'm asking, like, do people, is it just me? Do they not order decaf? How much do you have? Do you cut it off at like 10 o'clock? Because it seems like after that, 10 in the morning, you don't have decaf. I'm genuinely curious, but it's just a conversation and people open up. That's the other part. It's the opener when you ask a question, you're because if you tell somebody it's closed-ended, a question is open-ended, and it invites, more and even other people to come in there. And this is just a part of the training that you offer for people that want to up their game and lead their team. How do we find you, Wendy? How do we connect with you?
So the easiest way is our website, which is ourfuturelegacy.com, ourfuturelegacy.com. And you can go on there, click on contact us. You can schedule a discovery call at no cost, and we'll just explore your world and see what you've got going on. We may or may not be the right fit for you, and that's okay. If we are, wonderful. You'll be a new friend for us. And if not, we'll find other resources for you if at all possible. So we just are really blessed to do this kind of work and to work with so many people around the country and partner with them through celebrations and then through growth. It's a really, really cool thing to be able to do this and impact lives. So thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you too. And, just what you said is just an opportunity to ask questions. You would ask questions of somebody else, to get to know each other. And questions, I believe, is where the relationships begin.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Look forward next time we get together.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.